We want them to come and enjoy like a really great new location and a new fit out and all of those things, but we want them to walk away, I guess, having had the exact same sort of like emotional reaction to the dining experience that we've been offering for the last couple of decades. I guess that's the goal.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Institutions in hospitality are a rarity these days, with longevity one of the holy grails of the industry. Today I'm very excited to be joined by the third generation of one of Sydney's most loved and visited venues that started all the way back in 1963. Duan Wong is the co-owner of the Malaya in Sydney. Duan, how are you?
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's great to get you on the show. I'm excited to have, some member of a family that's been so influential on the culinary landscape. How are things at the moment?
Good. It's nice to finally be able to have a little bit of a breather after opening a restaurant last week. There's still plenty going on and plenty to do, but yeah, it's nice to finally have a moment at least to step back and take stock.
It's funny that you say opening a restaurant last week, and we're talking about a restaurant that's been around since the 1960s. Tell us about what sort of happened recently, because you found a new home for the Malaya.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right. Actually, not a full reopening, but more of a relocation. We after being at our previous location for 25 years, we just decided it was time for something new. So we probably started looking about. Oh, it's actually about 2.5 years ago now. We
Wow.
first started thinking about it and looking around to see what was out there, and yeah, found a new site that we think is going to be fantastic for us.
Tell us about the new site. Why did you choose that location, and has it given you the ability to change and evolve sort of what you do with the Malaya?
Yeah, absolutely. So we were down at King Street Wharf, which is part of Darling Harbour in Sydney, and we haven't moved too far. It's only about a 10-minute walk, but sort of up a little bit more into the centre of the city, up on George Street, and we were looking at a whole bunch of locations, basically between where we are around Circular Quay and Martin Place. And we were just looking to sort of reposition ourselves a little bit closer to what is essentially our core market, which is corporate dining. And we looked at, I think it was about 8 or 9 different sites, but this one was actually the very first one we looked at, and it took us a little while of looking around to sort of realize that it was the best.
It's also on the street where it all began. Was that sort of a hook for you as well?
It wasn't a hook in itself, but definitely a nice sort of like serendipitous sort of outcome, I suppose, that we actually didn't realize until after we'd sort of you know signed the lease and everything like that. And we're like, oh, actually, we've come sort of full circle. It ended up back where we are, and it is on the other end of the street. It's quite a way away, but it is the same street.
What's the last week been like for you with the sort of relaunch?
It's been really good. It's all gone remarkably smoothly, which is amazing. The build and the project itself did not go smoothly at any stage, so we were kind of prepared for the worst. And through the whole process, we were thinking, it's got to come good for us at some point. It's got to be easy at some point. And thankfully, probably the most important, part of the whole project, the opening week, was the week where it finally came together and ran smooth. So there was definitely plenty of close to sleepless nights and just a really busy couple of weeks. But yeah, can't complain. Really, really happy with how it's gone.
What was the biggest bump in the road in that sort of couple of year build that you had?
Um, the I guess just the search. The search took a lot longer. We started so long ago, as I said earlier. We thought we had more than enough time. We thought we were actually sort of starting a little bit too early. And a family friend of ours who was helping us sort of with the search kept telling us, no, 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 I think you're doing the right thing. I think you're giving yourselves the right amount of time. And then it turns out that we were under immense time pressure at the end and actually opened late. So, you know, having started 2.5 years in advance, I couldn't even imagine having started the process anything less than that. Um, so, because that was one, just going through a whole lease negotiation was something that was very difficult for me. Like, it's just not something that I'm familiar with. I've never done it before. I hope to never have to do it again. Um, it turned out beautifully in the end, but it's just, one of those things that as someone that works in hospitality, you're just not really prepared or have any experience in doing.
I'm very much looking forward to diving into the history of the Malaya. But first, tell us a little bit about the new version and the offering and what you're doing there.
So it's a bit of a funny line to tread. We're trying to freshen things up in certain ways, but also keep the dining experience as familiar and consistent as ever. We're not looking to revolutionize the restaurant in any way. We're certainly not looking to revolutionize the food or change the food too much at all. But we are looking to, freshen up and polish the dining experience a little bit. So a new fit out that's a little bit more modern and fresh, and then just tightening up service a little bit. A big change for us is the wine program. So wine and cocktails, just the whole beverage side of the business, just working on that to just improve the offering there a little bit more. I think at the old restaurant, it was good, but it was definitely like the biggest area with room for improvement.
Take us back to the beginning of the Malaya. How did the restaurant begin?
So my grandfather, his name was Wong Tai Si, started the restaurant in 1963 up on George Street near Railway Square. He wasn't a chef actually. A lot of people were surprised to find out he wasn't a chef, but he was a merchant sailor from Hainan Island in China who'd spent most of his youth traveling around Southeast Asia on ships, mostly out of Hong Kong and Singapore. And he just developed his love for the cuisine of Singapore and Malaya at that time. And this is back in the 30s and the 40s. And then he actually got stranded in Darwin during the Second World War, and then sort of stuck around in Darwin till the end of the war, and then stayed in Australia. And he bounced around Australia a little bit. He was living up in Darwin for a bit, I think in Queensland for a little while, before finally settling in Sydney. And actually, the Malaya wasn't his first hospitality gig. He owned a hamburger shop on Darling Street in Balmain. That would have been probably in the 50s. Yeah, crazy. And so he did that for a little while before finally opening the Malaya in the early 60s.
Tell us a little bit about the history. I mean, it's an incredible amount of time has passed since the very first opening, and obviously your family has worked during that period of time in the building. Do you have any sort of fond memories, particularly when you were young, with the restaurant running?
Yeah, so I'm old enough to remember. Oh God, I was going to say the last Malaya, but it's actually the one before that now. Um, so that was the restaurant on George Street, and I'm old enough to remember my sister was sort of just on that cusp, and she can't. But I definitely remember growing up in that restaurant, um, running around, playing in all sort of different areas. It felt, huge at the time, and I mean, it was still a big restaurant, but I walk past it now, and it's it's nowhere near as big as I remember. But yeah, definitely fond memories of growing up there. And back then, this is sort of in the early 90s, it was very different sort of business to now. It was a lot more sort of like old school Chinatown style restaurant in terms of, like the decor and the service and things like that. Um, yeah.
Do you have any stories of dishes or food from that area that you remember when you were young?
I remember from the restaurant laksa, and it was always a bit of a forbidden fruit because it's quite spicy, and I remember being told several times as a kid that you can't eat this yet, it's too hot. And I think like laksa is now my favorite dish at the restaurant, and I don't know whether being told that I couldn't have it at that early stage has been the reason I formed such a strong attachment to it. But it was always sort of like the forbidden fruit. I have a fairly vivid memory of being there with my dad and him sort of like giving me noodles with no soup on it, sort of like, been in the soup, but sort of like made sure the sauce had sort of dropped off before he gave it to me. Been my first experience of eating laksa. And that's definitely been a lifelong love of mine.
Tell us what it's like growing up in a hospitality family. Did you feel a sense of pressure to become part of that, or did you feel like that you wanted to do something as far away from hospitality as possible?
Our parents never put pressure on us at all, actually, which was really nice. I think that, especially our dad probably hoped that we would do it, but he never said as much. And they always made it known that, we had the option and it was only something we were to do if we really wanted to do it. And I don't know, when I was probably in my mid 20s, my sister was in her early 20s. Our parents actually came and spoke to us about it, like, is this something that you want to do? And we didn't need to give an answer right then, but I think they had to sort of come up with their plans. Like if we weren't going to do it, they needed to start thinking about what they were going to do. So I remember really appreciating it being brought to us that way. Um, so yeah, no pressure, which was great. But to answer the second part of your question, yeah, absolutely, 100% wanted to do something else and have nothing to do with the restaurant at various points in my life. Um, yeah, I started working in the restaurant straight out of school, just part time while I was studying. And this is my early 20s, probably like, yeah, 19 to 22. And at that point, I was like, this is the last thing I want to do. I want to go and, forge my own path, do something different. I think I always probably suspected that I'd come back. But at that point, yeah, definitely not what I saw myself doing.
Or what lured you in?
Um, I think just as I got a little bit older, I sort of realized that the restaurant is just so much a part of me. It's almost like a family member. And just the thought of not being able, not being involved in it, just felt so foreign and strange. I just couldn't imagine not being involved in the restaurant. Like the idea of having a career is like anything, like say I was an architect and just that being my life and the restaurant not being my life just was a very odd feeling. Yeah.
What was that period of time like for you, working with family members and sort of investing yourself into the business? Is there challenges in the family business of sort of direction to take things and what to do?
I think at that early stage, wasn't working so much with my dad. I was working on the floor and in the bar, and we had a great general manager at the time. So I was very much just sort of, like one of the employees working in that team.
Mm.
It wasn't until a little bit later in my late 20s, I came back from overseas, and that's when I started to work a little bit closer with my dad. Just sort of like supporting him in like the administration of the business and becoming maybe a bit of like a sounding board for him as he was sort of thinking through ideas and things like that. But we never really clashed. Like it was very much his business, so I was eager to sort of support and give my input. But at that stage, like I wasn't really pushing other ideas or anything like that.
Do you have any stories or advice that your dad has passed on to you that you've taken forward with the Malaya?
Um, Nothing that was given, I guess, strictly as like advice, but I think it's just the things you pick up from, from people, like the way that they work, like being methodical, like the way that they analyze things. So I wouldn't really classify it as advice. It's sort of just, experience sort of like picked up through observation of the way that, someone that you really respect and who runs a business really well, like from what you can see from the way that they do it. But we never, yeah, we didn't have the relationship where he would sort of sit down and just divulge sort of like advice in that sort of way.
Uh, there's many people in Sydney and from out of Sydney as well that have experienced the hospitality of the Malaya. You mentioned that you don't want to change the food too much. Are there dishes that have really stood the test of time, like a couple that you could tell us about that sort of really sort of epitomise and speak of the Malaya?
Yeah, absolutely. Like the laksa is the one that comes to mind first. That's one of the original dishes from like the very beginning, from the 60s. Um, it's quite unique actually, in that it's made with dairy milk, not with coconut milk. Reason being that back in the 60s, just Southeast Asian ingredients weren't that easy to come by, and coconut milk was one of them. Um, I don't think there was a very big market for it. So my grandfather started with the next best thing, which was dairy milk, and that's what stuck. People loved it, and I think it was, they tried to change it over the years at various points. And I mean, this is not for 20 years now, but maybe back in the 80s. And people just weren't interested. So it is, almost by definition not a luxury in that it's not made with coconut milk, but it's delicious and it's its own thing. It's taken on its own sort of status, I suppose. So that's definitely one. And then we've got our just original Malaya curries, we call them, which are, beef, chicken. We also do duck, which are made with the same spice blends that my grandfather created back in the 60s. So I guess that's sort of our, 11 herbs and spices recipe. It's our secret blend. And we use it in a lot of dishes, but in these specific curries, like it basically forms the entirety of the flavor profile. And that's been the same for over 60 years now.
It's been an interesting period of time for relocation and rebuild of a restaurant, and just generally owning a restaurant the last couple of years have been incredibly challenging. How much is sort of what the Malaya does, even over the last couple of decades compared to sort of what we have now? How much is the operations and things and the things that you think of that are important, have they changed a lot with the sort of all the adversities?
It's definitely different. I think in the 90s, when my dad sort of took over fully from his family, he wanted to modernize the restaurant in a lot of ways, especially service. So, as I said before, the restaurant was sort of a little bit more old school until the sort of mid 90s. And then I think there was a big step up in terms of service and just offering a bit more of a rounded sort of dining experience, with beverages, wine, those sorts of things. So definitely a big change in the 90s. But I think since then, basically since our father took over fully, our approach hasn't changed very much. We really strive to be like steady and consistent because we see that as our strength. So anytime there's change, we always try to do it slowly, never in big leaps and bounds. We definitely we're not opposed to change. Like we like change, but we're just always wary of breaking things. So we just want to go slowly and make sure we bring our customers along on the ride.
Longevity is hard in the hospitality sector, and yet your family has been extraordinary in that sense. What does it take, do you think, for longevity of a venue?
Um, so consistency can be really hard. Like not changing things can be hard sometimes. So it is a struggle. It's an ongoing struggle. Making sure that things are always the same or always up to the same level. You'd think that sometimes it'd be easy just doing things exactly the same, but it takes active management to do that. Um, and I think just building relationships. We have amazing relationships with our staff and with our customers. Um, and I think that's really key. Like we've got a lot of families who, like my sister and I have sort of grown up with the children in those families through them being customers. We have generations of families that come in together and separately, and it's just really lovely building those relationships. And I think that those relationships then foster other customers and other relationships. Um, and so we really prioritize that.
Um, these days, you're a co-owner with your sister and your mum. How does the business work? Do you guys get together and make decisions, or are you very much at the forefront of sort of where things are going these days?
So it's my sister and I who are sort of at the forefront now. So her and I are the ones that, making decisions about where the restaurant goes. Like obviously on the very big ones, like moving the restaurant and where we're moving, our mum was definitely involved in that process. But on the day-to-day operations, what's on the menu, the wine list, like who we're hiring, that sort of stuff, it's all my sister and I.
How do you feel about the history of the restaurant? I mean, it's quite extraordinary, really. And do you feel a pressure to sort of honour that and the way that you take and represent that moving forward?
Yeah, I think. we forget sometimes, the history and the legacy of it, and people often ask, and it always takes a second to sort of stand back and realize, yeah, it's pretty exceptional, isn't it? In terms of pressure, I don't know. My sister and I don't know if it's pressure, but there's definitely a sense of not wanting to screw it up. Like we don't want to be the people that are the generation that does that.
Well, you've made the move into the city, and it's all going well so far. What are you loving about the new space and sort of the energy that's been put back into the Malaya?
Um, it's just such a different restaurant to the old one, in a really exciting way. It's got lots of different spaces, so there's about four different spaces throughout it. So we can create lots of different sorts of dining experiences throughout the restaurant, including on this amazing sort of rooftop terrace that we have. Fortunately, our furniture is running a couple of weeks late, so we haven't opened it yet, but soon. Um, but yeah, it just feels a lot more sort of dynamic. There's a lot more sort of options in what we can do. The old restaurant was beautiful. It had an amazing view, but it was just one big sort of rectangle. Um, and you could divide it up into sort of private dining areas and things like that, but you sort of had the same dining experience wherever you were in the space, whereas now you could have a vastly different experience upstairs versus inside versus outside. Um, and that's really exciting. Like we're only a week in, but we're really excited to start getting to play around with that, um, and just work out how we're going to use it. It just seems like the possibilities are endless at the moment.
There's been so many people that have enjoyed the Malaya, and generations have as well. With this new iteration and moving forward, what do you hope that new visitors take away from the new Malaya?
I hope that new visitors, and they might not know it when they dine, but they will get a sense of what the restaurant has been for the last 25 years. Let's say, like, we're not looking for new or old customers to come in and have a brand new sort of dining experience. Like um, we want them to come and enjoy like a really great new location and a new fit out and all of those things, but we want them to walk away, I guess, having had the exact same sort of like emotional reaction to the dining experience that we've been offering for the last couple of decades. I guess that's the goal.
Yeah, well, no doubt you'll execute that with aplomb. It's amazing to see the Malaya back and in full force. What do you love about what you do?
Um, I just love that it's ever changing and you get to be creative. I'm super excited about being where we are with the build sort of done now because I get to turn my attentions back to the part of the business I love, which is, working on the menu, working on our offering, working on the wine list, those sorts of things. I've spent a couple years with most of my attention focused to the build and the project, and you know, highly necessary, but definitely not something that I love doing. Um, and yeah, now I get to focus on the fun bits of running a restaurant, like focusing on, being creative, creating things, creating drinks, creating food, just getting to express yourself that way. And it's endless fun. Like I love being in the kitchen and creating with the chefs. It's great.
Well, it's an honour to have you on Deep in the Weeds today, and very exciting to hear the Malaya is firing in Sydney again. Please keep in touch, and we'll catch up again soon.
Fantastic. Thanks very much for having me.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.